It was supposed to be just another wedding. White flowers on the benches, silent promises hanging in the air, restrained smiles among the guests. Soft music filled the space like a prayer, and all eyes turned to the altar where the ceremony took shape. That's when it happened. No one noticed at first. A soft sound like something scraping against the floor. Then a collective whisper, almost a shared shiver. The back door opened slowly, and through it came a dog. Dirty, shaking, and with one of its paws injured. He walked slowly, as if each step was an effort, but also as if he knew exactly where he was going. The voices stopped. The bride and groom stopped in the middle of their vows. Time seemed to hesitate, as if it didn't want to move on before understanding what it meant. The dog stopped right in the middle of the central aisle and looked straight ahead. His eyes, a deep, ancient brown, met those of Helena, the bride. And for a moment that no one could measure, only feel, it was as if the whole world had been summoned to listen to a different silence, a denser one, more full of stories. He didn't bark, he didn't cry, he just stared at her. And what was in that look wasn't pain or fear. It was something rarer. It was recognition. Helena didn't move. Her bouquet trembled slightly in her hands, but her body remained firm. She looked back as if she were rediscovering a memory she never knew she had experienced. There, in the midst of the celebration of a love that was being born, a being appeared that carried the echoes of something ancient, as if it came from another life or from a forgotten time. And that's how the story began. Not with a kiss, but with eyes in eyes between a woman dressed in white and a dog hurt by the world. Helena has always been made of silences, of those who carry more than they say, of those who speak from within. He was the kind of person who smiled gently, but had the deep-set eyes of someone who had lost his first illusions very early on. For 7 years, his life was limited to a room with the smell of medicine and closed windows. His father, who had once been a strong and sweet man, slowly wasted away in bed, taken by an illness that did not spare even the good days. She was there until her last breath. Never complained. He never cried in public, it just remained. Firm as if the pain didn't hurt, as if loving was a verb that just needed to be conjugated in the present tense. When he left, there was a void that not even time dared to fill. Friendships drifted apart as the months passed. Helena refused invitations, avoided meetings. She kept the engagement ring in a small blue velvet box, but for a long time she didn't have the courage to wear it. It was as if she didn't feel worthy of happiness after so much time dedicating herself to an end. It was Daniel who insisted, who remained. He loved her with a rare patience, respecting the spaces and silences, hoping that one day she would open the door of her heart to the future, and not just to longing. The wedding, then, was not just a celebration of love, it was a new beginning, a whisper of hope after years of mourning. Helena did not just wear white that day, she wore courage, fear, and the constant doubt of whether she could be happy without carrying guilt. But at that moment, faced with the injured dog, something inside her wavered. As if that canine gaze, quiet and attentive, had touched a part of her soul that Daniel had not yet reached. It wasn't love she felt. It was something deeper, as if that animal had recognized her on a level that not even she understood. Maybe it was no coincidence that he walked in right there, right on that day. Maybe, just maybe, some presences are answers to questions that the heart has not yet had the courage to ask. He stood there, standing in the church aisle as if he were part of the ritual, as if that walk between decorated pews was his own Stations of the Cross. And while everyone watched, frozen between strangeness and enchantment, the dog took a few more steps until he stopped right in front of Helena. She bent down slowly, still unsure if it was real or some kind of sign, The dress spread like a cloud around her knees. Their eyes met once more, and without asking permission, the dog simply rested his head on her lap. A simple gesture, but full of something old, like a reunion. The church, previously silent with astonishment, began to breathe differently. Some guests choked back tears. Others smiled shyly, as if watching something sacred happen before their eyes. Daniel approached too, but kept his distance. There was an implicit respect in that moment, as if any word could break the spell. Helena felt the dog's fur rough under her fingers. Dirty, bruised, but warm. Alive. And in some way I couldn't explain, familiar. The ceremony continued hesitantly. But the mood was different. Something had changed. What was a party became a testimony. What was a ceremony became history. After the vows, as everyone left for the reception, the dog followed them. Quiet, attentive, as if he were part of the entourage. And no one had the courage to send him away. That same night, Helena gave him a bath. She removed the thorns from his paws and gently cleaned his cuts. He didn't complain. He didn't growl. He just accepted it, as if he had been waiting for it. They decided to call him Dom. Dom didn't bark once. He didn't beg for food, nor did he try to climb on beds or couches. He just lay down next to the bedroom door and slept there, as if he knew that was the right place, as if I were at home. And Helena, looking at him lying there, couldn't explain what she felt. It was tenderness, yes, but also something more, as if a part of her soul had been welcomed by those quiet eyes. It was as if Dom had come not by chance, but by calling. The next few days were not easy. Although Dom's presence was welcoming, there was something in Helena's eyes that still felt distant. She began to leave the house a little more, to walk around the neighborhood with Dom by her side, feeling the cool breeze in the mornings, the smell of wet grass, the sounds of laughter in the background, simple things that had previously seemed so distant. But Daniel wasn't so comfortable. He could tell that the dog had become more than just a pet to Helena. Dom was now a constant shadow, a silent guardian who followed her around every corner of the house. It wasn't jealousy he felt, but a certain apprehension. Something about Dom didn't seem quite right. He was there, but at the same time he seemed from another world. It was as if Helena had found an echo of what she had lost, a piece of her own life reflected in the dog's eyes, and Helena knew it. She knew something was changing, but she didn't know what to do with that change. At one point, she found herself waiting anxiously for Dom's gaze, as if through it she might find answers to her own unasked questions. She felt the weight of the silence. Daniel's silence, which was beginning to fade not in words but in small gestures. He arrived late, no longer asked questions about her day. He smiled at Dom, but his smile was empty, as if he was beginning to lose something he didn't even know what it was. One night, while she was in the kitchen, Helena noticed that Daniel was no longer there. The living room was empty. She went to the bedroom and found him sitting on the bed, staring into space. "I know how hard you're trying, Helena," he said, his voice low, without the anger she feared, but with the melancholy of someone accepting the inevitable. "But this dog, I don't know, he's everywhere, and I don't know where you are anymore." Helena was silent. The words wouldn't come. What would she tell him? That she was lost? That somehow Dom was making her feel a connection to something she no longer knew existed? "I love you, but I feel like there's something between us. Something we can't find together anymore." Dom lay beside the door, watching them. His eyes seemed to absorb the scene, as if he already knew what was happening but had no way of stopping it. He didn't move, just watched. Helena felt a pang in her chest, a sense of loss before any words were spoken. as if a part of her was being pulled, not away from Daniel, but closer to Dom, closer to what that dog represented. Something she couldn't name yet, but that was becoming the center of her life. "I need time," she murmured. "I need to understand." Daniel nodded. He didn't say anything else. He just got up and left. Helena stood there staring at the dog, and for the first time she felt the weight of loneliness take shape. Not the loneliness of being physically alone, but the loneliness that grows when you realize you're moving away from the one you love most. Time seemed to have slowed down for Helena. The days passed slowly, as if she were stuck between two worlds, Daniel's and Dom's. The distance between her and Daniel only grew. She didn't blame him, but she blamed herself. She felt like she didn't know how to go back. That maybe the pain she had carried for all those years with her father, and that now took on another form, was something she needed to heal herself. Something that she could no longer depend on another person, no matter how much he loved her. And Dom, with his silent, unchanging gaze, seemed to be the only truth in her life. As if in looking at him, she saw not an animal, but a lost part of herself. The part that still needed to be touched, understood, healed. One rainy afternoon, while walking with Dom in the park, the world seemed to freeze in a single moment. The dog, who until then seemed calm and serene, began to pull hard on the leash, as if he sensed something she couldn't see. "Calm down, Dom," she whispered, but the dog wouldn't quiet down. He seemed to be in a race against time, with urgency, with a destiny only he knew. The biting wind seemed to intensify, and the smell of wet earth invaded his senses. That was when she saw him. Daniel was standing in the distance in the same park where they had once walked together. His eyes were tired, but there was something new there. A softness, a vulnerability she hadn't yet recognized. He didn't call out to her, but his gaze made her stop. Dom quickly approached Daniel. He didn't hesitate or look back. Helena, with her chest tight, saw the dog approach him and, in an unexpected gesture, lie down at Daniel's feet. She stood there, watching. A tear formed in her eyes, but she didn't let it fall. She couldn't. Something was unfolding before her eyes, and she had to let it happen. Daniel crouched down and ran his hand over the dog, who closed his eyes with a long sigh. Helena, speechless, approached slowly. When she finally stood next to Daniel, he looked at her unhurriedly, without expectations. "I've been waiting for you," he said, his voice soft, as if each word had been carefully chosen. "I know you can't turn back time, and I also know that what you need now is something I can't give you, but Helena, I'm here, and I'll wait." She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of those words settle on her heart. She was there with Daniel, but also with Dom, as if the dog was the bridge between the two worlds, the world of pain and the world of healing, the world of the past and the world of the future. Helena finally understood that true redemption did not lie in reconciling with the past, but in accepting the present in its entirety. The rain began to stop, and the sun timidly appeared between the clouds. Dom raised his head and looked at her, as if to say that everything was fine now. And for the first time in a long time, Helena smiled. The sun finally appeared, albeit timidly, breaking through the clouds like a promise. The sky, tinged with gold and gray, seemed to celebrate the moment of serenity that was slowly spreading around them. Helena, Daniel, and Dom were there, united in a way that none of them expected, but that deep down, they all knew was the only possible path. The walk back home was silent but not oppressive. The silence was now charged with something new. It was no longer a stillness marked by pain, but a stillness of acceptance. The acceptance that life does not follow a straight line, that love is not limited to a perfect story, but is made up of tortuous moments, of losses and reunions. The acceptance that sometimes the most unexpected beings, like an injured dog walking into a wedding, can be the messengers of a healing we didn't know we needed. When they reached the front door, Helena stopped. Daniel stood behind her, his gaze contemplative, but with a slight hope in his eyes that she had not seen for a long time. Dom, as always, was at her side. The dog seemed in his stillness to know more than any of them could understand. Helena looked at Daniel, and for the first time in days she felt like words weren't necessary. He held out his hand and she took it, feeling like they were finally both ready to take the next step. Not to erase the past, but to build a future. "Thank you," she said softly. "For waiting?" Daniel smiled softly in no rush to respond. He simply held her hand tighter, as if he knew that the greatest act of love is not in the words spoken, but in those that remain unsaid, in the small gestures and the moments shared. Dom, for his part, seemed to understand that his mission there was accomplished. He looked at them both one last time, with that deep gaze of someone who understands the mystery of life and death, of pain and healing. And finally, as if saying goodbye to a completed chapter, the dog turned and walked to the corner of the room, lying down calmly next to the window. He was there, but he was no longer needed. He had fulfilled his role as an angel, as a guide, as a symbol of everything that needed to be healed. Life now seemed to open up before Helena and Daniel like a vast field, a land where, with patience and love, they could rebuild what had been broken. They knew that the path ahead would not be easy, but finally they were ready to face it together. As the night slowly descended, bringing with it the gentle silence that fills empty houses and lonely hearts, Helena looked at the dog sleeping by the window, and with a serene smile she understood what he represented. He was not just a dog, he was an answer. He had brought her something more precious than any promise, the courage to move forward, to heal the invisible wounds, and to learn to accept the imperfect beauty of life. She was no longer alone. Neither was Daniel, nor was Dom. Everyone in some way was there in a moment that would be remembered forever as a story that transcends time and touches the hearts of all who still believe in the power of transformation. And as night fell, the soft sound of Dom's breathing seemed to be the music that sealed that moment, a music of redemption, of hope, and of love. If this story touched your heart, just imagine how many more are still to come. Here, every bark carries a new beginning, a second chance, a brand new life. If you believe in the power of dogs to change destinies, like mine, like yours, then subscribe to the channel and leave a like, because together we'll share stories the world needs to hear and feel.